Okay, so today is Wednesday, January 10. This was the last slide we left off on. We covered what MSDS stands for and the four big pieces of information that you need to get off of that document. So that's where we left off yesterday. Today, we're getting close. PPE is a three-letter an abbreviation for personal protection equipment. So it's very common in shops, not just aviation shops, but all kinds of maintenance shops, is for somebody to say, make sure you wear your PPE. And just to be really clear, the PPE stands for personal protection equipment, such as, do you need to wear goggles? Do you need to wear a dust mask? Do you need to wear splash goggles? Do you need to wear steel-toed shoes? Do you need to put on a chemical mask? Do you need to turn on the fan to the paint booth? Or you could argue that's not personal protection equipment that you're wearing. But so those are examples of PPEs. The ones we're going to wear, how often are we going to wear mechanical safety goggles in lab? What's that? Every day we're in the lab. Maybe I should say all the time that we're in the lab. All right, OSHA is a four-digit abbreviation for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration of the federal government. OSHA is a department of the United States government, and they produce rules that if you're a company and you don't follow them, OSHA can fine the company. There's some federal laws in there that allows them to fine companies. And when I don't mean that they say that you're fine, I mean that they charge you a fee, like a ticket. They don't put people in jail, but they charge companies. So generally what the OSHA does is they come in and they'll inspect your company. Usually they will give you notice that they're going to inspect your company, and they walk around and make sure you have enough fire extinguishers, the right kind of fire extinguishers. Have they been inspected? You know, do you have a place to put your oily rags so they can't catch on fire? Where do you put do you keep all of your flammable materials in a flammable materials cabinet so it can't catch on fire? If it does, it goes out really fast. Is what wrong? Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's Occupational Safety and Health Administration. But I will give you full credit if you write it backwards like I just did. OSHA does stand for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. All right. Hey, 1 out of 10 people figured that out. That's awesome. 1 out of 11, because I count, right? I didn't figure that out either. You get an A for today, Josh. For every graded activity that there is today, you earn an A. Just because you know I don't have a gold star. Sorry, man. I can pat you on the back. Come on up. I'm just kidding. You have insurance? You have some gold stars in your backpack? Okay. All right, in case we have to use a fire extinguisher, I actually taught at an aircraft mechanic school where we had this as a lab where everybody actually used a fire extinguisher. So we had a metal plate that was about 3 feet by 3 feet with a 1 or 2 inch lip all the way around, and it was mostly waterproof. And literally, I was doing this at Fresno Yosemite Airport, about less than 100 yards when we went to aeronautics last semester. Half a gallon of aviation gasoline in it, and I lit it. I would apartment at the airport and say, we'd be doing fire extinguisher training, and we were going to make smoke. And then I would also tell the tower and tell the tower that we were going to be doing fire extinguisher smoke. Because one time, tell them, somebody under the tower called the fire department and the fire department. Call anybody. It was a lot of fun. Well, it wasn't fun that the firemen showed up, but it was fun about fires. Yeah, and it's great. We use a water, push the fuel out the lid onto the asphalt, and it would. So we showed that water does not work on liquid fuel fires, and we also used powdered. We used a powdered fire extinguisher and a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher and a halon fire extinguisher. No. I have not submitted a budget request to Valley ROP to refill fire extinguishers. And Greeley College is not in their budget either. But the way you do it, if you're going to put out a fire, the basic thing you do is start hollering fire so everyone else knows about it. And then you aim the fire extinguisher at the bottom, at the base of the fire closest to you. And as the fire gets put out, you wave it back and forth and aim it farther and farther away. And you effectively push the flame, start near you and push the flame away from you. If you just aim it up in the air, it probably won't do much good. You got to aim it down at the bottom of the fire, closest to you, and wave it back and forth and push the flame away. Maybe I'll put that on my list next year, Josh. So when you flunk and have to take this class over again, as your second year as a senior, then you'll be able to use a fire extinguisher. I don't recommend that you flunk the class in order to be able to use a fire extinguisher. That's not my recommendation. When we go out, and you don't have to write this down, when we go out and we're doing engine runs, we're going to take a big CO2 fire extinguisher out there, and I'm going to debriefing, and it's going to be this. It's going to be if there's a fire, and put out the fire, and you're going to run, and any adult here in the building, there's a fire, and if there's no one in here to tell, then you're going to call 911. Huh? Well, if we're outside, you can run while you're outside. Thank you. You're going to run, then walk appropriately. How's that? Is that better? You just keep telling me where I'm screwing up, Josh. I appreciate that. Don't worry. I have a little book with put black stars next to students' names instead of gold stars. I'm just kidding, Josh. They're not black. They're blood red. I would never have black stars. In any case, safely tell the nearest employee, and then they will take the action. But there is an exception to that. If there's a fire and I catch on fire and I'm on fire, then I need at least one person. Thank you. Then I need at least one person other than John to put the fire out. Oh, and you're just going to like aim it towards me and then turn 45 degrees and pull the trigger. And you're going to say, yeah, black stars, ha ha ha. In any case, someone does get to put the fire out if I'm on fire, and then who else they get to go. So the other not run away is if I'm on fire. That way I can fight the fire, and I don't have to worry about whether you're going to get hurt or not. And if I get hurt, I got really good insurance. And if you get hurt, there's probably insurance, but I'll get in less trouble if I burn than if you burn. And I'm old, and I got plenty of scars. A couple more scars won't make much difference. But you do? Okay. Well, I don't want you to add to them. All right. We already told that part. Okay. I guess I do want you to write that down. So if you're not fighting the fire, which you're probably not, go tell the other instructors if they're around. And if they're not around, call 911. Anybody have a cell phone? A couple of you? Okay, great. I wonder if I put one more on there. Yeah, there it is. Call 911. My first concern is the personal safety of humans, and then second to that is saving any equipment. And then third, actually higher than that, is saving the building. If there's an airplane on fire inside the hangar and we can't put it out, then we're going to try to drag it out of the hangar. But fortunately, the airplanes inside the hangar don't have gasoline in them. So, except maybe that 150. It might have gas in it. I think the other ones don't. All right. So if you get injured, if you have an injury in shop, the first thing I want you to do is to tell me about it. And then either I or yourself are going to provide first aid. If you just cut your finger, you might get a band. So you might do it yourself. And then, once I know what's going on, then I'll call 911 if I think it's appropriate. But if you see somebody get their arm chopped off, don't hesitate to call 911 before you tell me. That's okay. That's really, really okay. Or if you see they get their head hit by a propeller, just call the funeral parlor. You don't have to call 911. get something in your eye, you do not have to walk slowly and safely, screaming out loud, go towards the eye wash, or you could go, hi, somebody drag me over to the eye wash, I can't. You know, say these things really loud. If you get something, I don't stand there and go, look, into the bathroom, I have to, or I go to the eye wash, okay? Don't wait for me. We already talked about that next one, the tools. We talked about that in shop for those of you yesterday. When did you get to use power tools? Brian, you weren't here yesterday. Surely you know the answer. No, you'd say, listen, I wasn't here, and what else would you say after that? The second half of it would be, no, it would be, Mr. Johnson, I wasn't here yesterday, and please stop calling me Shirley. I think I'm going to have that on a test. I'm going to have to put that on a test because I'm not getting the please stop calling me Shirley responses that I'm looking for. Anybody want to help Brian out? Go ahead, Josh. You have to get my verbal permission, and generally I'm going to say, go over there and I'll be there in a minute, but don't turn it on until I get there. I want to physically supervise you doing it. And after you do it 17 times correctly, I can leave, and then on the 18th time you can cut your arm off. I mean, I'm just pretending. You can only cut fingers off, not your whole arm. All right. No, I'm being facetious, sarcastic. That was a rhetorical statement. No, to answer your question, never deliberately injure yourself or other. I'm saying that into the microphone so that it's really clear here. Well, Mr. Johnson said I could cut my arm off. In fact, he told me to do that in class. All right, so goofing around with tools. I totally get the fact that you're in lab and sometimes you get done and there's 5 or 10 minutes till the next thing happens and you want to play, in my day we played sword fights with big screwdrivers. Now you want to play, laser sabers, lightsabers. You want to play lightsabers with screwdrivers? No, you don't get to do that. Sorry. Set the screwdriver down and then just make the noise go. But don't hold any tools in your hand when you do that. No goofing around with tools. If you're not sure how to use a tool, ask. Really the point here is that I remember last year I asked people, and most people, more than half of the students in this class had very, very little, if any, experience using screwdrivers and sockets and ratchets and channel locks and combination pliers and adjustable pliers and monkey wrenches, much less power tools. So you need to not feel bad and go, oh, I don't want to look stupid because I don't know how to use the screwdriver. This is the best time to look stupid. You'll cry, and after, and then now you'll be able to know how to use that tool the rest of your life, and then you'll get to laugh at other people when they don't know how to use tools, and you can say, oh, get out of the way, I'll show you how to use that number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Is that motivating for y'all? Okay, maybe that's motivating for Josh. Okay, thanks. All right, so if you don't know how to use a tool, and the shop tour, you missed out, Brian, we did it yesterday. If you need to cry, wait till break time, thanks. And let's see, I forgot to run this tool safety video, so we'll see if it's still there on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Don.
Hi, Don.
Hi, I'm Don Dawson. Today, we're going to drive home some important information on hand and power tool safety.
Most people have injured themselves with a tool at least once in their lives. Unfortunately, tool accidents result in thousands of serious injuries and hundreds of deaths each year, most of which could have been avoided by simply handling tools safely.
There are a lot of different kinds of hand tools, and new types of portable power tools become available every year. Power tools can run on electricity, gasoline, air pressure, hydraulic fluid, even gunpowder.
Depending on what type of tool you are working with, it could have the potential to cause abrasions, lacerations, amputations, puncture wounds, contusions, eye injuries, burns, electric shock, muscle sprains, and broken bones.
See how fun power tools are?
Using tools can also lead to health problems, such as hearing loss and tinnitus, a constant ringing in the ears, back and neck injuries, repetitive stress disorders of the hands, wrists, and arms, and respiratory problems, including emphysema, chronic bronchitis, and lung cancer. Power tools can be particularly dangerous since they often expose you to multiple hazards at once. For example, when using a circular saw, you could be cut by the blade, struck in the eye by flying wood chips, or shocked by the electric current. Breathing in sawdust may cause respiratory problems, and the noise from the saw can contribute to hearing loss. Non-motorized hand tools don't present the same degree of danger as their powered counterparts. However, since hand tools are driven by your muscles, there is an increased risk of repetitive stress injuries.
So, how many different ways can you hurt yourself using a power saw? Such as, okay, that you answered my question. How many? A lot. Yeah, hearing loss. What's the next one besides hearing loss? What kind of itis? Tinnitus? Well, technically that's true. If you can get tinnitus from hearing loud noises over long periods of time. All right, fine. He didn't say that one, but I'll accept that answer. You can cut yourself. You can have. What about the sawdust? Yeah, you can mess up your lungs a little bit. It's not like breathing asbestos. That was pretty good. Oh, electrical shock. That's my personal favorite. How many people have been electrocuted? How many people have done it on purpose? All right. My mom says when I was 3 that I found a bobby pin, a hairpin, and I stuck it in the outlet, and that zapped me, and my muscles contracted, and I pushed myself back from the wall a few feet. And when I recovered my composure, as a 3-year-old, I picked it up and stuck it in the wall socket again. I had to see if it would do it consistently. And sure enough, it did. No, I did not have a fatal accident. Don't get your hopes up. That was in an alternate universe. All right, there's section 3, maintenance records. Of course, we're talking aircraft maintenance records. You don't have to write down the word aircraft. Maintenance records. Oh, there it is. Just so you know, I don't care if you write it down or not, but you'll probably see me on multiple occasions write the word MX. That's an abbreviation for maintenance. So if I did, guess what the MX space MAN period is? The maintenance manual. Okay. All right. FARs is a 3-letter abbreviation for you've probably heard of these before. The Federal Aviation Regulations. Oh wait, darn, there I put it. FARs are a part of the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 14. Does anybody know what Title 17 is? Or what's in Title 17? These are actually groups of federal laws. Title 17, inside of it, it's got a lot of other things, but Title 17 has copyright laws. So Title 17 has the laws in there that says don't copy music and movies and then distribute them without copyright permission. among a lot of other things. It has lots of transportation laws in it. Like, go ahead. That doesn't violate federal law, but it does violate, whether you paid for it or not, it violates the plagiarism student handbook code of conduct policies, where it strictly prohibits plagiarism. Plagiarism is where you present your instructor work that somebody else did, but you tell them that you did it. So if you take somebody's paper and erase their name on the top and write it in, your name, or you just, it's a file, and you just change your name on it and change the date and the instructor and you turn it in, you're telling the instructor, I did this. When somebody else did, that's plagiarism, and that is a part of cheating. And no one will shoot you at Reedley College for it or physically harm you. But I'll just ask Valley ROP to kick you out, since we're not in a college class right now. Just so you know, plagiarism is listed in the syllabus that I distributed on Monday, and you signed that you read it and understood it. I said don't cheat. I don't think I read through all. I'm sure I didn't read through all. It's pretty hard in today's digital age to not be tempted. And there's websites out there. You can pay somebody $50 to write a college term paper. If it's a short one. If it's a longer one and a good one, you might have to pay $100 or $200. So I'm told. They didn't have the internet when I went to school, so I had less temptation. All right, so because it's the Code of Federal Regulations, that means it's mandatory. That means it's federal law. The federal aviations are therefore federal law, even though they call it Code of Regulations. We think about regulations. Yeah, that's a school regulation. Yeah, what are they going to do? Suspend me, or make me do detention, or you can get kicked out of school, right, for breaking the rules. But codes of federal regulation, that's federal law. You get to go to prison if they want you to. Woo. Don't worry, FAA usually doesn't send people to prison. They usually just take your license away, or they fine you dollars. And then, but if you did something bad enough to hurt somebody, then they would turn you over to the FBI, and the FBI could arrest you, and you'd be brought up on criminal charges under a different code of federal regulations. Don't worry, I'm not expecting anyone here to get caught violating federal law. All right, so there are portions of the FARs that, as an aircraft mechanic, you need to be familiar with, and so we're going to cover some of these right now. FAR Part 39, you may recall back in the old days, aka 2017, we talked about Federal Aviation Regulations. Part 61 is how to get certified as a pilot, and Part 91 was the regulations on flight rules, like how good does the weather have to be and stuff like that. Airworthiness directives, we didn't talk about it as a pilot, but as a mechanic it's a little bit more important because you're going to have to do them. Let's see. Has anybody ever heard of a recall on cars? Like the brakes, or something's wrong with the brakes because of manufacturing defect. So Nissan sends out a recall. As if you own 1997 to 2003 Nissan Sentra, bring it in to the dealership and they'll replace a part on it. And most recalls for cars, they do them for free, right? So just so you know, the automobile manufacturers do that because they figure it'll be cheaper for them to pay for a recall. The dealer doesn't have to pay for it. The car manufacturer has to pay the dealer so they can turn around and pay their mechanics. So the manufacturer pays for the part and pays the dealer for the labor, but it's free to the person that owns the car. And they do this because not because the law requires it, but because the manufacturer thinks they'll have less money paying for the recall than the lawsuits that they will lose when they get sued over people dying. So when they crunch the numbers and they decide, you know what, we're only going to kill 10 or 12 people across the next 10 years, and at $5 million a person, that's only $50 or $60 million. And if we did a recall, it'll cost us $200 million. They're going to go, nah, we're not going to do a recall. I'm not trying to make you a jaded person and think that capitalism is evil and terrible. But literally somebody at General Motors or Nissan or wherever is going to be looking at what's a lot cheaper if we don't do a recall. There is something similar in aviation, but there's two big differences between automotive recalls and aviation recalls. Aviation recall, but that's not one of the two big things. Airworthiness directives are FAR Part 39. Oh, so you know, for cars, if you find out about that recall, is there a law that says you have to bring your Nissan Sentra in and get it fixed? All right. Directives, it's very similar to recall. The manufacturer finds out, and sometimes they get data from the FAA, the manufacturer finds out that a certain part on their aircraft or their engine or their propeller is breaking often. And so instead of issuing a recall, they go to the FAA and say, hey, we think this is a safety issue. We think you, the FAA, we've already published our service bulletin that recommends to people to come in and get it fixed, but they're not going to pay for it. So the owner of the aircraft has to pay for it. But they say, we think this is a big enough safety issue that it needs to be mandatory. So here, FAA, here's our data, and we'd like you to issue a law, an amendment to federal law, and put it into FAR Part 39 and call it an airworthiness directive. And mandatory. If there's an AD out on your airframe or your engine or your propeller or any of the appliances in your aircraft, and appliance could be a radio or brakes or tires or seat belts, something like that, you have to do, the owner of the aircraft has to get it fixed. So the two big differences between recalls and cars and ADs is, one, ADs are mandatory, and two, the owner and the AD, unless you're under warranty, the owner of the aircraft has to pay for it. So if you get a warranty on your airplane and it's good for 2 years, and it's 2 years and 3 months later, and an AD comes out because the landing gear keeps breaking, oh, sorry, it's a $1,000 repair, you have to pay for it. And if it's issued, you don't have a choice. You can say, nah, I don't think mine's going to break. I'm going to go anyway. You don't get to choose. You have to do it. It sucks. It doesn't suck if you're the passenger on that airplane, because now you have a reasonable expectation that the aircraft was maintained well. FAR 43 is the regulation where it says how well you have to do, how to do maintenance. Yeah, Jordan's having a rough year, I think. Life, I don't know. You haven't. There's life, year, decade, day, hour, minute, second, day. Okay, all right. So if you say to yourself, I want to do maintenance on an aircraft, and you want to make sure you do it the way the FAA says you have to do it, you would look it up in FAR 43. And I'm not going to, you don't have to write this next part down here, but it says things in the FAR 43 like, how often do you have to do a 100-hour, well, actually, that's, never mind. It says if you inspect an airplane on a 100-hour inspection, it tells you the things you have to inspect. FAR 43, we talked about it a day or two, that's a regulation that says it's a major repair or a minor repair. FAR 43 says if you do work on an aircraft, it says the aircraft is unairworthy until you write down in the maintenance records in the logbook of the aircraft what you did. If you fix an aircraft and you don't write it down, technically the airplane's not airworthy anymore. It's not airworthy until you write it down. So there's a lot of details. We're going to cover 2 or 3 more, but FAR 43 tells a mechanic, this is what you got to do when you're doing maintenance on an aircraft. Interestingly enough, and pilots don't think about this, but this is also the FAA regulation that tells pilots who own their airplane and they're doing preventive maintenance on that list of things that they do, they also have to comply with FAR 43. So I would recommend if you're ever a pilot and you're doing maintenance on an aircraft that you own, that you consult with an aircraft mechanic to make sure you're following FAR Part 43. Just like Part 61 is the regulation that says, here's what it takes to become a pilot, FAR Part 65 is the regulation that says this is how you can become an airplane mechanic. Of course, we already covered that yesterday or the day before. Did I tell you that one? I forgot to. I think I told you later. How old do you have to be to get a mechanic certificate? All right. Okay. So we're not going to cover all the things to do to become a mechanic because we already covered that. Now, the Part 91 that we talked about in private pilot ground school, it was flight rules. How low can you fly to the ground if you're over a congested area or in an uncongested area? Or what do the weather conditions have to be if you're in Class G airspace? But towards the back of Part 91, the 91.200s, way in the back of Part 91, that's where it says when you have to do maintenance. That's where it says if the aircraft is not operated for hire, you have to have an annual inspection, and it expires at the end of 12 calendar months, or it's only valid for 12 calendar months. Part 91 is where it says if the aircraft is operated for hire, in addition to the annual inspections, you got to do 100-hour inspections. Now, I don't recall how much I covered last semester about ELTs. ELTs, you don't have to write ELT down. ELT stands for Emergency Locator Transmitter, and it's a box. It's not the special kind I have that I stick up on my dashboard and has a GPS in it. An ELT is just a radio with a motion sensor, and it's usually bolted in the back of the airplane. And if the airplane crashes or hits the ground really, really hard because it's in training and the flight instructor doesn't take the controls away from the students soon enough, and they bang the airplane into the ground, the motion sensor will measure that it was a really hard landing and think it's a crash, and it will start transmitting on 121.5 megahertz. Okay, that ELT has to be inspected every 12 calendar months. Part 91 says it's 12 calendar months. It says when do you have to. So there's a lot of stuff in the back of Part 91 about when do you have to do maintenance. Any questions so far? So this slide is about who can fix an airplane, or a helicopter, or a blimp, or a gyroplane, or a powered lift aircraft, or a glider, or what did I miss? Airplane, helicopter, blimp, glider, powered lift. Okay, that's enough. The first one hopefully is pretty obvious. It's a mechanic, a certified mechanic. That's what we're learning how to do here in this class. Learn about, certainly not everything, but learn, hey, what does it take to become an aircraft mechanic, a certified mechanic? And what would school be like? You can also be a repair station. You may recall in one of the videos from yesterday or the day before that there was somebody that was sitting at a bench, and somebody was working on a hydraulic component, another person was working on an electric motor or a generator. You can see the copper wires in it. Those people that work at the benches, they can have an AMT mechanic certificate, but most of them probably don't, because all they're going to do, they don't have to know a million different things and can fix a million different things. They're just going to sit there and they only have to know 100,000 things or 100 things. And so that repair station is a company that applies to the FAA down and says, hey, I want to fix generators and electric motors. And here is my building, and here's all my shop equipment and tools, and here's all the maintenance manuals, and here's all the people I'm hiring, and here's the inspection system. So after the person does the work, somebody comes behind them and checks and see if they did it right. And here's how I'm going to handle the paperwork. And the FAA can approve that company as a repair station. And technically, that repair station doesn't have to have any certified mechanics working for it at all. They probably do have some certified mechanics doing something, but they don't have to hire any certified mechanics because the company, the organization, is certified. But unlike an aircraft mechanic, so let's back up a little bit. You graduate from AMT mechanic school. What can you do? Brian, you were here yesterday. Surely you know the answer to that question. Brian, Can you name things that AMP mechanics do right out of school? You weren't here yesterday, so surely you can name some of the things we covered. You know you should. You know what? I'll accept that. Go ahead, Jonathan. Work as an automotive mechanic, if you got an AMP mechanic certificate, the answer is yes, you can work as an automotive mechanic and get paid for it without having any formalized training or certification whatsoever. Now, if you don't do a good job, people will tell all their friends and no one will come back and have you fix their car. And if you do a brake job and it fails and they get in an accident, they will sue you. So you might go out of business. But there's no federal law, and I believe there is no state law in any state that says you need some kind of a certificate to work on cars and get paid for it. You can open up a car repair shop and say, you know, JF's car, super deluxe, awesome car repair. Surely you, and then in parentheses underneath it you say, surely, comma, we'll do a good job. And then you can charge money and pay taxes. No, you don't need to be certified to fix cars. So what can you do as a brand new AMP mechanic certificated person? You could go into the military, but you don't have to go into the... Oh. Well, anybody can work on military aircraft that the military says is okay. Every U.S. military system has a little bit different. Like in the Air Force when I was in, which is back right after 48, 49, 50, those 4 years. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. At least someone's conscious in the third row. So he didn't hear it. He didn't hear it. So when you got out of basic training, you went to basic mechanic school, and then you became a level 1. And then after you worked for a few months or 6 months and did a certain number of tasks, your instructor could sign you off and you'd be a level 3. And then you'd work for a couple of years and you could become a level 5. And depending on how high you got, you could do more and more stuff. But that was just the Air Force's system. I don't know what the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, or the Coast Guard do. And the Air Force may have changed because it's not the same world as it was in 1952 when I got out of the service. Actually, it was 51 because I got out right before the Korean War. Anybody? What can you do with just you were a brand new mechanic? You do minor repairs. What other minor things can you do? Anybody other than Josh? Minor transmitters. There's minor repairs, and then there's minor alterations. What else can you do? What's that third thing you can do? The 3 big things you can do. What kind of inspections? You can do 100-hour inspections. Yay! So those are the 3 biggest things you can do. All right. Okay. So, but does it say? Did I say you can only do it on helicopters, or you can only do it on airplanes? So what's the restriction there? If you're a brand new airplane mechanic, and you went to airplane mechanic school, and all they had was airplanes, and you get hired at a shop where all they have is helicopters, can you immediately go to work on that helicopter? Probably not. If it had the same kind of engines in it that you worked on before, you could work on the engine. But if you're not used to rotating blades and how all that stuff works, the first time you do that kind of work, somebody has to supervise you that knows what they're doing. But as soon as they supervise you once, now you can do it. But there's no documentation. You don't have to write it down. I got supervised on a tail rotor today, so now I'm super awesome tail rotor mechanic. You don't even have to write that down. Now you can think of it and go, yeah, I'm a super awesome tail rotor mechanic. SATRM. Super awesome tail rotor mechanic. You can get a shirt made. And then it put a picture of a tail rotor blade on. Okay, that's what I did, when I learned how to work on tail rotors. Just so you know, that word awesome existed back when I got out of AMP mechanic school. The word, it was brand new. It was a brand new word. Certified repair stations can only fix the things that they're certified for. Like I'll give you an example of worst case scenario. A magneto is an electrical generator that's bolted onto the back of piston-powered airplane engines and old Harley-Davidson motorcycle engines. And this magneto right here, it's bolted into the engine, so when the engine spins, the inside of the magneto spins, and it's got a magnet, and it generates electricity, and it generates the spark. Goes through these blue wires, hopefully, and they're connected to the spark plug. So this magneto will generate a spark for all 4 cylinders, and then there's another magneto on the other side. It also generates electricity, and it sends it to each cylinder because each cylinder has a spark plug on the top and on the bottom. So if one spark plug goes bad or the whole magneto goes bad, the other spark plug will fire, and the engine will still work pretty good. So that's a requirement in other FAA regulations that on piston-powered airplanes that use gasoline and spark plugs, you got to have 2 separate ignition systems. So if either one quits, you still have another one. But let's just say, for instance, I was in the U.S. Air Force, and I was stationed at the Air Force Academy, and they have some training airplanes that have piston engines. And all I did in the Air Force for 4 years was I overhauled magnetos. That's all I did. I get out of service, and I don't want to be an aircraft mechanic. I love magnetos. Magnetos are my life. Surely there is nothing in the world more that I would like to do than overhaul magnetos. So I buy magneto tools, and I set it up in my garage, and I buy maintenance manuals, and I pull out my maintenance records, my personnel records from the Air Force to show how much experience I have overhauling magnetos, and I go to the local FAA station, FAA office, and say, I want to set up a certified repair station to overhaul magnetos. And they'll come out and inspect it. Oh, here you got a building, you got lights, you got tools, you got equipment. Here's your maintenance manuals. Oh, here's your training. Okay, great. You can be a repair station. But now that's the only thing you can do. Whatever is on your repair station air agency certificate is the only thing you can do. You could have multiple stations. So a repair station is stuck with whatever they're certified to do. That's all they can do. Aircraft mechanics, as soon as you've been supervised once, you can do anything. I can work on a Cessna 152, and I can also work on a 747. If you made it, you can fix it. If you're the company, it's Cessna, you can fix all the Cessnas that you made, even the ones you made 75 years ago. So effectively, if you're a manufacturer, it sort of makes you a repair station that's automatically approved for anything you build. And then we discussed a day or two ago about private pilots under certain conditions. If you have at least a private pilot certificate, you can do certain kinds of maintenance on your aircraft if you're the owner or the operator. And you don't have to write down the following list, but there's about 30 things in FAR 43. There's a list of preventive maintenance items. And if it's on that list, you can do it as long as it's not too complicated. It actually says in there, that's where it says a private pilot can, or hire can do preventive maintenance if they're the owner-operator, and if it's on the list, and if it's not too complicated. Like changing spark plugs is not too complicated. Most changing landing lights or light bulbs is usually not too complicated. So let's say you're a private pilot and you change the landing light bulb. What FAA regulation governs what you do? 43, FAR Part 43. That governs anyone who does maintenance. We're going to take a break until 9 after. 9 after.